Hello everyone, this is Hank. I'm back. Today we are going to talk about the second part of the EOS RP autofocus features. Just to sum up what we talked about in the first video, we had covered the different AF methods, meaning there's 6 of them. Okay, we also talk about the differences between the AF methods, one-shot versus servo, to tell you the fundamental differences between the two. Okay, we also talk about one of the menu item, which is this one. We talked about the AF operation method, eye detection, continuous AF. Today we are going to continue to talk about the touch and drag and focus mode, as well as 2 other menu that has to do with autofocus in the EOS RP. Okay, so first of all, touch and drag AF setting. This has to do with whether or not you can use the touch screen to do certain things to autofocus, namely. Okay, now in order for you to touch the screen for the purpose of AF, you need to enable this. Okay, now this thing works both ways, either when you are using the LCD or you're using the EVF, the electronic viewfinder, and you still can use the touch and drag AF. Okay, last time when we talked about the face plus tracking, and when it chooses the wrong spot to focus on, and I told you all you have to do is just touch where you want it to focus and it will focus there. Okay, in order to do that, you got to enable this touch and drag AF. Okay, now once you enable that, there are 2 positioning methods. It's called absolute versus relative. Okay, absolute is when, for example, the system focus on the wrong one and you want to touch the right spot, but you missed, right? So you touch, for example, if you want to touch the person's eye and then you touch the chin, and then you have to drag it, move it up to the eye, and when you drag it. Now in absolute mode, if you drag halfway and then you somehow lift your finger off, now the focus point is in the wrong place, and then in absolute you theoretically can touch that again and move it to the final place. Absolute allow you to do that. Now if you choose relative, it won't allow you to do that, so it will treat it as a new drag. Okay, but in reality you can't really tell the difference between the two. But on paper or in theory, absolute seems to be a better thing to do, even though in practice I never could tell the difference. Okay, when it go to active touch area, okay, normally this is for when you're using the EVF, right? When you're using the EVF, you have a choice of using a whole panel or part of the panel. And the reason that they allow you to do part of a panel, and there's a lot of choices, is depending on where your nose is going to hit the screen. Okay, the way that I use the EVF is like I use my right eye, and so my nose normally touch the left part of the screen. So the camera cannot tell the difference between the nose and the tip of your finger. So it assumes that you had designated a new AF point. It drives you crazy because the nose touching is purely accidental, right? So I discovered that if I choose the right one, and my nose always hit the left, so the camera ignores my nose completely, so I can still touch and drag and do everything by choosing the right panel. Your mileage may vary it allows you to do a lot. Okay, with that, focus mode, it goes between AF and MF. You might consider why you even bother having it, but realize that there's many lenses that don't have the AF/MF button on the lens. In that case, you have to use the menu item to switch over to the manual focus. Okay? Alright, so we're done with number 7. Number 8 is the next one that we need to worry about. Okay, lens electronic MF options, pretty interesting. And mind you, it only works with the lens that has electronic manual focus, meaning that when you turn the focus ring, there's no mechanical linkage. It's all done electronically, and all of the RF lenses are like that. Many of the EF lenses that are newer are like that. Okay, some old EF lens has got a mechanical link. You can tell by when you turn the focus ring, the lens itself move in and out even though it's not attached to the camera. So you can tell there. So when you have an electronic MF lens, then you can set this menu. You can set it, but the camera without the right lens, it will ignore these. But if you have the right lens, it will activate these for you. So the default disable after one shot, and if you choose that, you can't tell anything different. And of course, when you disable it, then you don't use this option at all. So it boils down to these two, one-shot enable and one-shot enable magnify. When you choose one out of the two, the camera will allow you to do manual focusing while you're in AF. Okay. And it will activate the manual peaking for you. It also activate the magnification for you if you choose the one that I chose. Okay, I have a separate video that describes that in details, and I'm going to provide a link. You might want to check it out. It's fairly interesting in my opinion. All right. So the next one is AF assist beam firing. So you have a choice of disabling it at all, so you don't use the AF assist beam, and you have a choice of turning it on, or you have a choice of only using the LED part of the assist beam. And let me kind of tell you a little bit about that. Okay, a lot of Canon cameras, EOS RP included, it has a built-in LED light in the front of the camera. So when it's too dark to focus and it wants to help the camera focus, it turn on that LED light, and it make the object brighter so that the camera can focus on it. Okay, so that's default. Now, most of the compatible flashes, external flashes, has that same feature. Okay, it uses a flash or a dedicated infrared generator. It send out a pattern, light up the subject so that the camera can focus on it. And it's very strong, it's very powerful. Okay, so if you have a compatible flash mounted and turned on, and you set the option to enable on, it will use the flash first. And if the flash is not mounted, or the flash is not turned on, or you don't have the flash mounted at all, then it'll use the LED. Okay, so when you enable on, it will look for the flash first, and then it look for the LED. And that is the desirable option. However, if your mounted flash is not compatible, which are true in many cases with Godox and Yongnuo and the EOS RP, it's not compatible any longer, even though it might have worked with the DSLR, won't work with the RP or the mirrorless Canon. In that case, it's going crazy on you. So in that case, you want to use LED only, and then you don't have to mess with the flash that doesn't work properly. Okay. Now the third one is MF peaking setting. You can set it. So the MF peaking, what it does is like when you do manual focus and when it is focus, when the image is in focus, it will light up the areas that it is in focus, so you can at a quick glance tell that, okay, you've achieved focus manually. Okay. Unfortunately, it doesn't let me do that and show you because I'm hooking up to the HDMI, and it's not available when I'm hooking it up. Okay, but I have a separate video on MF peaking. If you care to find it, I'll try to provide a link. Okay. All right. So we're done with number 7. Number 8. We have one more menu item to look for, and you press the info button. Look for the orange tab. Okay. Look for orange tab, and it's a CFN2 autofocus. You go in here. There's our 7 choices. Let's start out with number 1. Number 1 is tracking sensitivity. This is applicable only when you're using servo mode. Okay, one shot, the camera will ignore this. Okay, what this is when you already have the subject locked, okay, the default is 0, which is in the middle, and the camera may switch the target on you even though you locked on the target, but if it sees a bigger target, more contrasty target, it'll switch on you at some point. Okay, so if you wanted to switch faster, you go to the right. If you want it to switch less often, you go to the left. I'm sorry. Okay, so you want it less often, you go to the left, but even when you do a -2, it still kind of switch on you. So keep that in mind. It likes switching target on you. Actually, in the previous video, when I did this, it switched on me even though I had it on -2. And at the time, I couldn't believe it, and I thought it was going to some weird mode, but actually it's just switching the target on me because it found something more contrasty. Okay, so that is what it does. Okay, I leave it at -2. Just personal preference. Okay, and then the second one is similar except different. It's also applicable to servo, and it will switch if it sees targets that's moving, accelerating, meaning that it's changing the speed. So it will switch over to that. Okay, 0, it will switch not normally, but if you go to the right, it will switch more readily. Go to the left, it will switch less readily, but it will switch on you. Guaranteed that much. Okay, so that's number 2. Number 3 is again is AF point auto switching, but in this one is kind of the same as the other one, except this one works for either one shot and servo. So normally this is for your one shot. Okay, one shot is also switch on you, but it's almost like an initial picking up. Okay, it switch on you. 0 is a default. If you wanted to switch more readily, you go to 1 and 2. Okay. Number 4 has to do with whether or not it will continue to focus. If I have to give you a scenario, otherwise it won't make any sense. And this matters a lot more when you have big telephoto lenses, okay, that has very shallow depth of field. So for example, if you are focusing on something 100 feet away for one shot, okay, so you take the shot and then you take a rest because you're waiting for the target to come in, like say birds in flight. So you're waiting for something to happen. And then the next time, instead of 100 feet, the bird fly by you at 10 feet. So you're trying to put the lens on the bird and try to focus. And you will find that the camera cannot see anything because the focus was at 100 feet and now it's trying to go 10. It doesn't even know whether or not it should focus right or left to achieve it. And by definition of Canon, it will declare AF impossible at that point because it doesn't know which way to go and it doesn't want to hunt. Okay, when you have great big heavy telephoto lens, hunting is really bad for the battery and everything else. Okay, so it gives you the option. It said, oh, just quit, don't even try. And it expects you to manually focus it to help it. Now, when you're doing birds in flight, you would miss the shot if it hesitates at all. Okay? So when you set it to 0, it will try to hunt. We'll go right first, and if right make it even worse, it will go left, and eventually it will achieve focus. Slow, but at least it works. Now, if you choose number 1, it will stop. And if you don't know what's going on, you think that your camera is broken. Okay? It used to be like 1 was the default. At least on the EOS RP, it switched over to making 0 the default. I highly recommend that you keep it at 0. Otherwise, it will drive you crazy. You don't know why it's not working anymore. You have to turn off the camera, turn it back on, and then it'll work again. That sort of thing. Okay? Okay, number 5 has to do with whether or not you want to choose all 6 method. Okay, just a quick demo. So you choose 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So you have to cycle until you get to the right one, right? So you got to do it 6 times maximum. Okay, so now if you're saying that, hey, I'm not using many of these things, then the menu item is for you. Okay, you go in here and you said, okay, I want face plus tracking, but I don't want spot. You don't have a choice on the third one, but I don't want this. I don't want this. Okay, you press OK. Okay, now when you go do that, okay, you don't have to choose the one that you disable. So instead of 6, you go 3. Okay. I'm greedy. I'm going to set it back to all of that. Okay, your mileage may vary. Okay, now number 6. If you have an initial focus point, right, and you have a choice, like if you choose 0, the point is going to stay in the same place, even if you turn the camera vertical. Or you can have 2 separate points. You'll remember you have to establish the first point. And then from then on, it's just remember that initial point. Okay, so that's a choice. And then number 7, it only works if you are in face plus tracking and you're in Servo AF method. Okay, automatic is what I have set. So in that case, I happen to have the correct setting, right? So face plus tracking in Servo. So when I press the focus button, this thing will automatically pick the initial focus point for me. I have no control, right? Okay. So now if I want some sort of control, I have a choice between number 1 and number 2. So number 1, okay, number 1, you have to set it first. So if you got to first choose it first, okay, go out. And then you see a square or whatever, the method that you are using. Yeah, you see a square, even though the method is the same. Okay, so now you can press the AF point selection button, the one that looked like a window below the star button in the back of the camera. You can do that and you can move it. Okay. So you move it wherever. So for example, if you move it here and it will remember. Okay. So you can move it and focus it. So it focuses it there. Okay, so that's the initial. So now if you have that option, right? Okay. You have that option, and even when you choose something different, like say you go and you choose that, and then you go back and it focus there, right? And then you go back here and you change your mind, you choose it here. Okay, so now guess what? It remembered that box there that you had set. And if you press focus, that is where it's going to start, and that's what it means. All right. Okay, now the third choice is like you do an AF point set for one of those. Okay, so depending on whether or not you have it. Okay, I just happen to have it there, but it will go up there somewhere, and then you can like press that focus point selection button, move it to wherever you want, right? So that would be, next time would be your initial point. Okay, so it'll remember that initial point. So again, if you go in here and you even if when you changed it to something else, it doesn't really matter, right? You change it to something else. Now, every time you choose it again, it'll remember. Okay, remember the last box there. That's where it's going to start. So those are the options that it will set for you, right? Personally, I find it more troublesome because unless you frame the subject the same place all the time, you actually wasted more time moving that darn thing around. So I usually just use automatic first, and if I don't like it, I will touch the screen to where I want to focus. That's the better way of doing it, but they give you the option. Okay, with that, I think we're done with all of the AF menu options. So video number 1, video number 2. This is number 2. I thank you very much for your attention, and I would appreciate very much if you give me a like. And if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. It is much appreciated. Thank you very much. Bye-bye now.